Welcome to Recruiting Roundtable, where we talk to HR and talent acquisition leaders about thoughtful topics in the world of recruiting. For today's discussion, we're going to be talking about recruiting software. I am very pleased and excited to be joined by Steve Taylor, lead talent acquisition at Global Relay, and Spencer Hinton, managing director at Rocket. Steve, Spencer.
Thanks for having us, Sean. Good
Yeah,
to be here.
Of course. Thanks, guys, for making the time. Okay, so as tradition here, we always start with some intros. So please briefly discuss, your role and just a short intro of your company for the people that are tuning in. Let's start with Steve. Go ahead, Steve.
Sure. Hi, I'm Steve. I'm the lead of the talent acquisition team at Global Relay, and we're a Canadian SaaS company headquartered in Vancouver, with offices in New York, London, Chicago, and other regional offices. And we're a private cloud for highly regulated industries. We predominantly are archiving communications data, so email, everything from email to social media, and do that for the purpose of compliance. And I've been with the team for about 9 years in January, and it's been a fun ride.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve. And Spencer.
I'm Spencer. I am on the founding team here at Rocket. We are an AI-powered recruiting agency, combining incredible software with excellent recruiters to help companies hire the best talent out there.
Awesome. Thank you, Spencer. And I am Sean Huynh. I'm the host of Recruiting Roundtable. I also have a little career update that I'm going to share with everyone, but we're going to wait till the end of the show for that. So stay tuned. And I'm excited. It's something I'm really excited about. So let's just jump right into it. So we're going to talk about recruiting software, specifically, things that we may be looking at moving into the new year. It's December right now, and we're moving into 2024. Also, obviously we're going to be looking back at some of the pieces, tools, and software that have been in our recruiting stack for this past year. But let's start with the question. What are some essential tools or pieces of software in your recruiting stack? Maybe we'll start with Steve. What are you using, and what's really driving a lot of value for you and your team?
Yeah, I think easily the first piece that comes to mind is the impact we saw after implementing an ATS. So when I joined the team, we were about 300 employees, and we were still using a help desk ticketing software for the purposes of recruitment. It had been expanded to that. And obviously, it was not built for that. It surprisingly worked remarkably well for what they were doing. But I got to be a part of the team. I had a very small role in implementing our first applicant tracking system. We used iCIMS. It was a good tool for us to basically go from nothing to having something robust. And the way I describe iCIMS, and I don't mean to speak ill of it, I think it was a perfect tool for us. It's like a reliable Honda Civic. That if you need to do anything, if you have some basic mechanic skills, you can pop open the hood and figure out just about anything. And we grew from 300 to about 600 people, maybe close to 700, and we could tell we were about to grow significantly. Today we're about 1,500 people, and we needed something more robust to get us there. So we were looking for something with a better user interface, with more automation, and so we did a lot of research, and I was kind of tasked with that primarily. And we selected Greenhouse as our ATS, and we've used that for, I think it's been 3 years. And to extend the analogy, Greenhouse is like a Tesla. I really appreciate how automated and smooth it is, how it looks and feels. But sometimes I pop open the hood because I'm curious about how to change or customize things. It's like, okay, I don't I don't necessarily know what's going on here because it's all behind cases and stuff, and you can't see. You can't get your hands dirty with it quite as much. So I did appreciate the level of customization that we got with iCIMS. It's just basically a database, so you could figure out you could anything you want to start collecting data on, you can then report on. It's not that simple with Greenhouse, but ultimately it's been a far better tool for us. So there's other software platforms that I could talk about and probably will, but to begin with, at least implementing an ATS and then moving to a more scalable system has had the most dramatic impact on our ability to recruit here at Global Relay.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, ATS is just kind of like the backbone of the whole talent acquisition kind of process, right? So maybe Spencer, what has your experience been with ATS systems at Rocket?
Yeah. Actually, Greenhouse is a super popular one that we've interfaced with a lot of our clients. But in terms of recruiting stack, we use basically I think two big ones. One is obviously LinkedIn. We use that quite a bit. I think everyone does. But the second one, which is the one that we use much more significantly, is something that is homegrown. We built in-house, and from the outset was something we wanted to do. So we built from the ground up our own ATS, which includes multiple different things. But two big ones I like to talk about. One is automation in the workflow. So our idea was, we got some recruiters in this room. Let's get their feedback and build an ATS that they want to use and automate the things that are going to benefit them the most. And so optimizing for our team's time. And then the other piece is search. So our ATS has a super powerful AI-driven search tool inside of it that our recruiters use. That just allows them to do a lot more stuff in shorter periods of time. And I can go much deeper into those things, but that's probably the biggest thing in our stack, and trying to sort of, we have an in-house engineering team trying to make that all encompassing, sort of a one-stop shop for our recruiting team to use as an ATS, as an outreach tool, as a candidate management platform, and all of those things. And it's called Titan. That's what we use internally mostly.
And so staying on that, Spencer, what do you think when you're looking at software, what do you think are the most important pieces? Is it like the functionality, utility? Do you think it's the ease of use so that your recruiters actually use it? Or do you think it's something else? Like what makes, you mentioned Titan, what makes Titan such an integral part of what Rocket's doing?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, like you had mentioned, Sean, getting an ATS that people want to use. I think there are a lot of them out there that people just like dread logging into and messing around with. And so, for us, I guess there were two big components. One of them was creating an interface that's pretty easy for the recruiting team to use. And then the second one is actually saving time. So the sort of the big premise that we started with was, how do we basically make the job of a recruiter only about building relationships with candidates and less about like, sending an email or finding a profile and, managing that profile and stuff like that. So creating automation that adds value to their day, and, puts them in front of candidates more candidates for more time. And so I think like it being easy to use and being actually effective were the two big things that we focused on and continue to focus on, that make it, I think in our case, at least, hopefully people are telling the truth, but they like using the ATS.
And Steve, when it comes to adoption of software, I think that's always like the big challenge, right? Like your Greenhouse probably sold you this amazing vision and they showed you all those bells and whistles. How has the adoption been, and what are some of the things that you've done with your team to drive adoption of the software so you're getting, the best return on investment from the spend that that you have with Greenhouse today?
Yeah, and you mean like internal adoption with our hiring managers and the employees
Yeah,
internally?
just everyone that touches the system, right? Because everyone's got to buy in.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the things that was really helpful was that some of the people who are using the software the most are the HR team. And so, we're very involved in scheduling the interviews for the hiring managers and doing all the logistics. So we do all the heavy lifting for them in that way. And then the managers, our hiring managers, the team leads, that are embedded within in the engineering teams or marketing or whatever, they're all doing the interviews. So as HR, we actually do very few interviews now. We're mostly setting the things up for them. So both sides need to have a very heavy use of the platform, and so we were able to get access to a sandbox, which gave everyone a bit of exposure before everything went live. I feel like that really assisted with the training, and just the change management of getting people on board and enrolled in what we were doing, because they got to have a hands-on experience with the software. So I feel like sandboxes are not perfect, but I grabbed a whole bunch of fake resumes from Disney characters and threw them into the system, and just let them play around with what it looks like to advance a candidate through the platform. Just do some of those basic tasks that you rely on a day-to-day basis from your ATS. And
Mhm.
so yeah, I found that having the sandbox was a big part of it, and also just being patient and like taking time to answer questions and point people back to documentation or whatever. We also did training sessions over. It was during the pandemic that we rolled out the new ATS, and so that was a little more challenging because in-person training is so much easier. But
Mhm.
we had to adapt, and now it's hard to imagine doing anything else, to be honest. But we were able to do some screen sharing and walk people through how to use the software for the um, basic needs that they had. And then we did training in layers. So we did a training that was specifically for our most intensive users, and then a little bit of a broader, more general training for those like everyday users, and then quite an open, broad, optional training like a lunch and learn for the option, like for the people that had occasional use of the platform.
Mhm. So it's interesting that, there's two very opposite ends of the spectrum. I mean, Rocket's using an in-house built ATS, Global Relay's using kind of an off-the-shelf customizable product like Greenhouse. Steve, what would you say? Where is Greenhouse really driving the most value? Like, where are you getting huge bang for your buck using Greenhouse over maybe, the systems you used before, other systems you evaluated?
Yeah, two things really float to the top for me. And Spencer, you hit on one of these things already with what was important to you guys when you were building your in-house system, is the candidate experience. So that's critical. But if anything is more important, it would be making qualified hires. Taking the time to ensure that, um, you know, I heard years ago something really interesting. We use a personality personality metric. Tool as well that may speak to later. And I remembered when I was doing my certification with that platform, they said people predominantly interview based to learn about someone's skills and experience, and knowledge, but rarely are employees terminated involuntarily based on their skills and experience and knowledge. It's often
Mhm.
about their fit. It's often about their level of engagement or their ownership or their responsibility, things that are not just on the resume or often will come up in an interview when you say, how much do you know about this? And so the biggest difference that we notice going from our original ATS to Greenhouse is the ability to, we moved from just having a comment box that was totally open, and we just had to plead with hiring managers, please add your interview notes into the comment field, to a robust scorecard that's
Mhm.
customizable, that every manager is automatically reminded about before the interview, an hour after the interview, and then every 24 hours for the next week. Automatically fill out your scorecard. And these are scorecards that can be customized by the person who owns the hiring for this job, so they can specify exactly what they want their interviews to ask about. They can even input certain questions that they want to be asked and tie them back to attributes that the candidate would be scored on. And then there's a visualization of it, thumbs down, neutral, thumbs up, and then a star. Just to show like, oh, and then there's like a no, like a deal breaker button. So that way we can see quickly and I find that also works really well on a diversity level. I have attention deficit hyperactive disorder. So having ADHD means that sometimes what helps me the best is when I can have visual information coming at me quickly, helps me to process what I need and then move on, and
Mhm.
not getting lost in the text. And so to be able to have a high level snapshot of visually how did this person do, I find that is also really helpful. And software that pays attention to neurodiversity, I think that's critical as well, especially in 2023, 2024.
It's
Yeah.
amazing. Spencer, what about you? Like, what are some of the where do you think the most value is coming for the team with Titan?
Yeah, I think for us, that the number one thing is delivering the right kinds of candidates to our clients, and just making sure that we're aligned and on the same page. And so I think the thing that probably adds the most value from my perspective is the ability to find those candidates quickly for our recruiters. So the search aspect of the tool is super helpful. I think it's definitely the thing that we've gotten the most ROI on. The time put in building it and getting back. That's just been huge. So I'll kind of give you guys an example. One of the things that we do in the search tool, we use a similarity model that can map like hiring trends. So for some of our clients, they'll say, we want engineers from Airbnb. And what they're really saying is they like the engineering culture of Airbnb. They like the kind of people that they hire there. And there's a lot of sort of context to pull out of that statement. And so what the tool does is it maps the hiring trends of teams at Airbnb. And so we can see like, Airbnb has hired from X company, that company has hired from Y company, and we can map that back like infinitely. We don't, but we could. And so based on that information, we can build this sort of really complex map of all these hiring trends, compile the data, and do a search based on companies similar to Airbnb. And that would take you could do it as a recruiter. It would just take you a long time to kind of create that map, and the tool can do it basically in like 2 seconds. And so then you basically you do the search. You have a list of 500 candidates that match that similarity profile, and you can send them messages. And so that has ended up being pretty powerful for our recruiting team to kind of get from 0 to 1 on a search, and then ultimately put them on the phone with those candidates quicker. And the other thing that it actually ends up doing, this was intentional, but is creating a better match. So when you send a candidate an email that maybe is a little bit customized, but it's not 100% customized, but you've done the work on the search end to kind of find the right profile, it feels like a great, sort of customizable opportunity for that candidate, and you get better response rates and more engaged candidates. So down the funnel, it's provided a lot of value for us too. So just to sum it up, that search tool has been the biggest bang for our buck in terms of what we've invested in the software. There are lots of other things, but I think that's definitely been the one that's really driven the most value for us.
So you're saying, but mostly on the sourcing side of things.
Yeah,
That's where you get the most value.
Yeah, I think it's like almost eliminated that aspect of the job. Like that's been our goal really from the beginning, is how do we sort of take that out of the equation?
So it's interesting because there's a lot of, and I want to kind of pivot to AI right now, which is like really a hot button topic, but I know Rocket's been leveraging AI for years now. How are you seeing AI being used in some of the software that you're either using or evaluating? And are you seeing it more on the sourcing piece, or kind of helping move the candidate through the process? Maybe I'll start with Steve. Do you have any experience, and have you been tinkering with AI, whether in Greenhouse or in other solutions you've evaluated or used?
Yeah, and I feel like everyone's on the rush to figure out how do we implement this. It's quickly become something that if your software hasn't implemented AI, hasn't enabled it, you're going to be left in the dust pretty quick. And I think that's at least the fear. And so I feel like some of what has driven AI implementation into the software is innovation. I think some of it is actually fear of missing out, fear of being left behind. And so from my perspective, that's led to some useful and helpful innovations in terms of the software, but it's also led to some things that I actually not convinced are of a net gain. I'll give you one example. So I'm grateful that LinkedIn Recruiter, which is a tool that I use often as well, has implemented some AI features into their talent suite. The side of that I think was needed was when I get a lot of the same messages or responses from people. When most of the people who write back with engagement, which is great. But I also really appreciate when people will circle back to me and say, hey, thanks very much for reaching out. I'm just not interested in this kind of opportunity right now, but maybe keep me in mind down the road. And So because I get such a high volume of those responses as well, it'd be helpful if I had more options of things to be like, hey, this is something I truly mean, but I don't have to write it all out. Um, so those kinds of things were what I was looking for, to make my life a little easier. Maybe even something that could automatically help sort, or prioritize. I mean, again, like I shared earlier, that's really helpful, for someone who is maintaining a really busy, schedule, and reaching out to a lot of people. That can definitely help, if I know where to prioritize my time. When I look at come in the morning and I see quite a full in-mail inbox. Where I feel like, AI has not added value is, in things like, hey, we can write this message for you, or like,
Mm,
here's the candidate's response. If you want, we can write the entire response. And I'm just like, I don't know about you, but I'm getting more and more emails from candidates, or even just sales and marketing folks, where
mhm,
it's like, oh, come on. Like, I use Chat GPT quite a bit, and I'm very selective about how I use it, but I do use it quite a bit. And so as a user, I am very aware of what the tone and the voice
Mhm.
of, generative AI sounds like,
Yeah.
feels like. And so I'm getting a lot of messages from candidates where I'm like, come on, you could have taken the time. Like, one example is we're hiring for a VP of marketing right now, and I've engaged with a lot of really fantastic candidates for this role. We're hiring in New York City, so you can imagine the candidate pool is quite wide. And it's a VP of marketing position. I remember getting a thank you email for an interview that was just pure. It felt to me like it was totally written by generative AI, and I'm like, you're the VP of marketing. You have to create content. Like, come on. So things like that are automating. I feel like sometimes we're automating things that ought to have a human touch,
mhm.
that are going to smell like a machine, a robot, and they should not. But things like reminders, things like automation, things like, um, prioritization, uh, all of that's a huge help. And then the last one is Greenhouse has been implementing, AI for a while, and they're doing something quite interesting, which is basically, I think they used to call it Greenhouse Predicts. They may have changed that right now, but, I'm forgetting. But basically, what it does is it says, okay, based on the role you're looking for, based on activity in the market, and based on the speed of which your team operates, here's when we expect this role will be filled.
Hmm.
And that can help me as I go back to the team to say, realistically, we're looking at this kind of a time frame for hiring. So make your plans accordingly. If this is
Yeah.
a really critical position, we either need to go faster or more aggressive, or you need to plan that you may not have this person ramped up until, you know, this time frame.
Yeah, I think predictive analytics is a really cool application of AI for sure. Spencer, what are your thoughts? I mean, on AI and in particular engaging candidates, whether it's on an outreach. Is AI hitting the mark? Is it doing too much? Is it being too obvious? What do you think?
Yeah. I actually 100% agree with you, Steve. I feel like the sort of quick and easy implementation of AI in a lot of products is, let's write some things, and it's not terrible, but it's not convincing. And I think everyone kind of knows it's not convincing. So when you're reaching out to candidates with maybe a totally AI written message, they also probably know that it's AI.
Mhm.
And I think it makes it less convincing for them. Every candidate probably wants to feel like this is a personally written thing just for me. And AI just hasn't gotten there yet. I think it's good if you're brainstorming, or if you want to quick sort of like bounce some ideas back and forth. It can do that really well, but you then have to go and kind of do the work to implement those ideas. Um, we use it in lots of ways. So we've been talking about AI since 2017. I think no one really even could predict in 2017 that GPT would be this like game changing thing. But or maybe there are some people that could have, but we were using it mostly in search. And I think for us, again, I keep going back to this, but that's been the thing that we've put a lot of our engineering power into. I think we are also using it in some capacity for writing. Less so to touch point with candidates directly. I think there's maybe some power in customization that it can offer quickly. So if it can quickly read a profile and offer you some ideas on customizing an email, that's pretty good. And it can do that at scale. So if if you want to reach out to like a bunch of candidates at the same time, and it can offer customization options for all of those candidates, then there's some value there. And I think that can be done, and something that we are working on. But the cool part about it is a lot of these models, they're basically really good at reading things, and a profile is just text essentially, right? The company name, skills, the experience. And so we're working on optimizing some of these models to read thousands of profiles at a time and compile those profiles in such a way that as a recruiter, you don't have to go through and read 1,000 profiles. It can either provide great summarization for you. It can cross match better at a higher speed than you can. And so implementing it on that end is sort of the area that I think has a ton of potential. Again, I mean, I've spent probably like way more of my life sourcing candidates than I ever want to admit to anybody. And if I don't have to do that anymore,
join the club, Spencer.
That's something that every recruiter in the world would probably be really happy about, not having to source. I have way more fun talking to people than I do reading their LinkedIn profiles. So I think there's a pretty powerful potential in that aspect for AI, in particular generative AI and these models that are coming out. But I definitely agree on the text front. There's still like probably a good leap before we get to the point where it's convincing enough that you don't know it's written by AI. Anytime I read a blog post or an email, I can pretty much tell immediately, oh, this was written by, somebody just put a prompt into GPT and then pasted this to the internet. It's pretty obvious. So I agree with you, Steve, on that front completely.
I find when I'm using ChatGPT, I'm often saying something like, but not too polished.
Yeah.
Because I was like, oh man, I find, just that ultra formal language. I'm like, that doesn't even sound like me. Again, not that I'm planning to use it like and just, verbatim, but it is really, I find, again, so helpful when, my one of my team members today reminded me, hey, we've got a global HR meeting happening this month, and it's our pod that's in charge of the icebreaker that we do at the beginning. And so we're doing this fun icebreaker where it's like, what's your guilty pleasure, basically, and we'll kind of list out these things and see at the beginning of the meeting if we can match the team member that would correspond to what we think is the guilty pleasure. So I was like, well, I just need some instructions. So I said to ChatGPT, okay, this is what we're doing. Give me some instructions that I can send out to the team for how to do this. And I said, keep it fun. For the first time ever, it did not give me something too polished. It included a bunch of emojis. It was just like, it was a super helpful base. Obviously, I tweaked it a whole bunch, but I found that was helpful because it's like, yeah, if you're getting something too polished, it's like, that's not how we want to communicate. And so, maybe I'm sure OpenAI will continue to develop as they launch ChatGPT 5 or whatever it is next, to make these things, because sometimes when I say not too formal, not too polished, it's like, yo, man, and it's like, cringy. It's like such a pendulum, isn't it? Like,
yes.
And years ago, we had a VP of software engineering who said, we call it artificial intelligence, but really what it is artificial stupidity, and you're trying to continually encourage the system to be less stupid as it gets, as it gets smarter. It's really more a process of being less unwise, less unhelpful. And so, yeah, I think we also need to have a certain degree of grace for the software platforms as they're implementing AI, and to not expect the world from the technology, not expect that they're going to have it completely figured out, because it is new, it's evolving fast, it's happening at a very rapid clip, and so there, I think we, as software users, we also need to have a certain degree of grace and respect for the fact that it's going to be an iterative process, and part of what is required is the mutual understanding of that, and actually helpful feedback, from users is probably pretty critical. So I actually really pride myself on being a good user of the software platforms we use, and I do work hard to maintain a positive relationship with our customer success representatives or the account managers that we work with. Even though at the end of the day, there's that balance of power or something where it's like they're selling me the platform, they want to keep me happy, but I really want them to know that we're an engaged customer. And I found one example of that is we, because we've really filled out our use of our ATS. They've often fed back to the fact that a company of our size, it's very unusual and rare to have utilized all the features and to kind of fill out the four corners of the platform. But we've relied on it so heavily. We're paying a lot of money for this. Like, we need to take full advantage of it, especially if it's going to make us better at what we do. And so I think that when it comes to the relationship, like, I really want them to know that we're engaged, we're willing to give feedback. And so I attend my monthly catch-up meetings with our customer success person, and they actually upgraded us from the regular customer success program to enterprise customer success, even though we're kind of a smaller company. 1,500 people is not small, but on the enterprise scale, we probably are. But I like to think that's partly because of the value that we're able to bring back to them. And what's cool about that is the customer success rep for the general customer has like maybe 30 customers or something, whereas at the enterprise level, they've got 4 or 5. So they're able to be much more strategic and not just say, hey, well, this is how to use the platform. They're like, okay, how can we help you get the most out of the platform? So seeing that relationship go both ways is critical, and something that AI will never be able to truly replicate. We always have to have two people on the other side of these things. At least maybe that's just my thinking.
No, Steve, I think what you're saying is so important, that human element is going to always be really critical. I think that, the engagement, no matter how good AI gets or how good any sort of, especially in recruiting, I agree with that. No matter how any, AI gets or any software platform, how good they get, that element of critical thinking on the human side is just always really important. I think in terms of lots of things, making sure what you're doing actually makes sense when it comes to AI. There are a lot of like weird, wacky things that come out of it that you got to be paying attention to. And then I think for a company like Greenhouse or any company that's building software, you need feedback from people to make that software better. It's not, going to do it on its own, at least not yet. And so whether you're engaging with the CS team at Greenhouse, or, you're engaging with your team on how to use AI and like think critically about the stuff that it's putting out, whether it's content or it's telling you a profile is good, you got to have some brain power around, is this actually the truth, is this actually going to work? And that's always been a core tenet of ours, is that and I think there's a little bit of a debate on in our industry, is software going to take over this job? Can it do all the work of a recruiter? And I think, like, emphatically no, it cannot. There's a lot of ways that it can augment and help us do our work, and that, I think that's where it's probably going to end, because in the world of hiring, and it kind of going full circle back to something you said in the beginning, Steve, around just that cultural fit. A person has to identify that cultural fit and spend the time with someone else to understand, are they going to match that kind of cultural fit? And I don't think that's going anywhere. And one of the big reasons why we just wanted to keep putting recruiters in front of candidates more often, giving them more time to do that, so that we work primarily with small companies, like startups, and on the hiring front and on the firing front, the number one element that all of those guys look for is, can I work with this person? Are they going to, they're going to match our work culture, at the same speed that we work at, or, have the same kind of like ideas that we have around how to get stuff done. And all of that has nothing to do with, where did they work before, or, what language did they write programs? Right. It's all about, that one-to-one human interaction. Can we have that?
Yeah, totally agree with that. Totally agree with that. Humans will always be important in recruiting. I think it's a people business, right? So you can't take people out of the equation. So we're coming up on time. So let's do a quick little roundup. Both of you gentlemen have been at your companies for quite a while. I think Spencer 7 years, Steve 9 years, right? Which in today's world in tech is like might as well be 30 at this point. I'd love to hear both your perspectives on two topics. One, why are you still at those companies? What makes you stay? And two, what are your thoughts on candidates that don't have that kind of longevity in careers, and maybe every couple of years are changing, or maybe they've been in a job for a year. Does that matter to you when you're evaluating a candidate if you're interviewing them for one of your roles? I'm just curious. I get this question a lot from candidates, and they're asking, "Hey, like, what are your clients saying about my job history?" I just love from two guys who have spent a lot of time at your current companies. Why and how do you feel about candidates that may not have that type of tenure? Let's start with Steve.
Sure. Yeah. I didn't know I'd be at the same company for 9 years, and I've loved it. I'm still feeling fresh in a way, which is surprising. There's been a few things that have kept me where I am at Global Relay, and um, several, but a couple that I'd highlight is uh, it's been exciting. It's been very exciting to be a part of a company that's been growing um, significantly, but not without careful consideration to how we've grown. Um, we've never done a round of layoffs, which I'm really proud about and really grateful for. Especially, I know that's not even company. That doesn't mean that people who've had to do layoffs have not been careful. Obviously, the market has had a lot of upheaval and has been challenging. Fortunately, we've had a market position that has we're a SaaS company, so we've only seen increases in revenue quarter over quarter since we went profitable in the early 2000s, which has really helped us to be um, able to have a predictable forecasting for growth, and we've been able to grow strategically over this period of time. So when I joined, we were about 300 people. Today we're 1,500. So it's been a really fun ride being a part of that. But at the same time, the culture hasn't expected me to be glued to my desk this whole time.
Hmm.
I've got a large family, so and they're all pretty. We're in the elementary school years with them, so it's very busy at home, and so this role and what I can give to it wouldn't work for my family if it was working insane hours. During
Hmm.
the pandemic, we were scaling our London office and we didn't have an HR team over there. So, yeah, there were some years where I was up early and things like that. But at the same time, this company really values the people that work in it. And that has created a culture of collaboration that I find extremely dynamic and enjoy working in. That I have time and space to put my head down and focus on something. Sometimes I even throw my headphones in when I need to just zero in on something. But when I'm facing a problem, my team's all there, and I can ask, get feedback, and do the same for them. So I think that kind of an environment is one that has uh, has been really healthy for me and something that I've enjoyed giving back to.
That's great. And what are your thoughts on candidates that may not have that kind of tenure? Do you like what are your initial thoughts? Do you care? Does it matter? Do you dig into why they've had 4 jobs in 5 years?
I always try to reserve judgment, honestly, when I see a few short stints, and I think I've gotten pretty good at by being transparent and kind of that's sort of my approach. I'm pretty real and honest with people. They tend to reciprocate that back, and so I've been wrong, but generally I have a pretty good idea when someone's just hopping around, unsatisfied, or if there's common themes. Yeah, I hated that boss. I really didn't like this boss. Oh, my
Mhm.
current boss is the reason I'm looking to get out. You're like, okay, all right. Um, versus like some folks have just had a tough go with layoffs and they've worked for companies that looked like things were going to be good, and
Mhm.
then we had a pandemic or then there was a recession or whatever. So I think that what we can't do is just make quick snap judgments based on someone's short tenure, or we can't always even predict how long they're going to stay with us.
Mhm.
um, finding someone who is a good long-term fit is always critical for us. We almost never, I want to say never, but should I, make snap judgments where we hire people quickly without really giving some thought to whether we could get whether the potential relationship has longevity. So it's not something that we want to rule out. Um, when you have a stack of 150 resumes, does it factor in? It does, right? To
Sure.
be totally honest, like if you see a lot of short tenures, I do see that as a rejection reason at times. When you have a group of candidates who've been in their role for 4 or 5 years, but nobody should get discouraged because, especially with all this AI and everything that's happening, like I think the human touch, like what we've highlighted in this conversation, is as important, if not won't be more important, just kind of like the quality or the value we place on handmade goods today,
Hmm.
right? You know what I mean? Like there's that move back to the analog, to the way things used to be sometimes, not for everything, but for certain things you want it to be like that. I think it's going to be the same with personnel, like the way we relate to people. And that's why we've said like a machine can't always recruit people, because at the end of the day we need someone with consciousness needs needs to be engaging with someone else with consciousness, and it's things like that that actually get highlighted in the debate about AI and machine learning. Is it does tend to be categorize people, and well, that has a lot of negative implications for racism or for other really vital things for us to keep in mind. And similar, I think we have to be open-minded and hear someone out um,
Hmm.
whenever we can.
I love that. Thanks for sharing that. Spencer?
Yeah, really like that handmade point, Steve. That's great. I feel like over my time at Rocket, there's probably been, a number of changes that have made this feel like multiple different companies at certain different points. So I don't necessarily feel maybe like I've worked at the same company for this long, which is good in a way, right? I think, but I guess the big reason why I've been here as long as I've been here is first and foremost the people that are here. The reason I joined, big part of that was who was trying to get me to join. The founders that I work with here at Rocket are some of the smartest guys I've ever met, and I really appreciate never really being the smartest person in the room. That's a great thing for me. And so working with them closely over the past 6-7 years has been amazing, right? Just getting to learn. And so I'm continuing to learn, and as long as I'm continuing to learn, I think that's a big reason why I'll stay. Working with great people and continuing to learn has been huge. And I think the other part of it is just genuinely excited about what we've been doing and the progress that we've made around the software that we're building, the team that we're building, and then, the impact that we've made for the companies that we've worked with. It's always great to hear people say things like, oh, you changed our perspective on how, working with agencies is like. Stuff like that always feels really good. So, getting those good feelings and working with great people and just always learning has been huge for me over the time that I've been here. That's probably how I would sum it up.
And what about the short stints? Do you have any feeling on
Yeah,
that?
I would have to say I feel a little guilty in this question. Probably some degree of blame lies on people like me who are constantly reaching out to folks to pull them out of companies they work in. Maybe there's like some element of blame that I should accept as a recruiter who's constantly trying to rip people out of their jobs. But no, I tend to actually agree with Steve around reserving judgment and just really like having that conversation with someone around, why is there a short stint here? What happened? Just, on a human to human level, tell me about, your journey. And some people, end up having these stories that are, it makes sense why they would have been in a company as long as they've been in a company. And other people, you can definitely tell they're maybe they're chasing the greener grass, and they're never going to find that greener grass. And so you just have to sort of dig in and learn that and get to know people. It's why it's so important to have like significant and meaningful interactions with candidates rather than like transactional ones, because if you're not getting to know them, you're never going to understand why they are, who they are, what situation they're in. We do have a lot of clients who avoid short tenure. I think, in the industry, it tends to be something that's like not very positive to have short tenure. But it's funny. We did a couple of years ago. We did this really big analysis of tenure. Actually, we wanted to basically be able to predict: do people care about this metric? And I think anecdotally, you will hear a lot of people say, yes, we care about this metric. We don't want people with short tenure. But when we looked at like thousands of candidates that have been sent to clients, pretty much they don't. I think if it's a good candidate, they'll take them. And, part of what we do when we send someone is we write a story about them. I'm sure, Steve, you've worked with agencies where they submit candidates and there's some notes. So we kind of try and tell that story. And if that story is compelling, they're going to get an interview and they can get hired. And so I think it's just an interesting point for me, because if you asked me off the cuff, do people care about it? I'd be like, yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a negative. But then it was funny to see that the data actually says not so much.
Interesting. Thanks, guys, for sharing. So I have a little career update I want to share with everyone. It's pretty exciting. So I actually have decided to join Spencer at Rocket. So there you go, the shock and awe, right? And so maybe I could talk a little about my journey. So Spencer reached out to me. I was maybe 2 weeks into launching Alchemist, and I'm not going to rehash what Spencer said. For basically everything Spencer just said, the founding team, the executive leadership team, the AI sourcing piece, all those things just got me really excited. And somehow, I don't know how these guys did it. They convinced me to walk away from a company I had been working on for X amount of time, all this branding. But I think from my perspective, and people are going to ask me this, so I'll just like clip this and I'll send it to them. The reason I decided to make this move is because I'm motivated by winning. And I realized that with the team that Rocket had in place and the infrastructure and the software that was underpinning their service offering and the leadership, that I could achieve more faster and I could win more often with them than trying it on my own. And even though I had successfully launched a recruiting agency and ran it for 4 years and have seen those successes and know I could do it, it was more about, can I win and be more successful and scale faster and achieve bigger things with Rocket? And that's really why I decided to make that move. And so what I want to say to anyone listening out here is, look, you can be 6 weeks into a new job and change. You can do that. If you see an opportunity that you can't say no to, go for it. Right? Now, if you're doing that every 6 weeks, that might be a problem. But don't be afraid to make bold decisions in life. And don't be afraid to change your mind. Right? Because when I talked to my wife about this opportunity, we laid out, the pros and cons. And the only real difference was if I stayed at Alchemist and being the CEO, then I get the clout and I get to be the man. But in the end, does that matter? Like it really doesn't. Right. So it was about, these are things that matter to me. And I'm super excited, Spencer, to be joining the team and helping turn, Rocket's already a successful company, but taking it to the next level. And, I want to encourage anyone out there that if you get presented with an opportunity that you feel good about, and even if you've just started something, it's okay. Sometimes ripping the Band-Aid off earlier is much easier and less painful than later.
That's exciting, Sean. Congrats.
Yeah, thank you.
I have a bias for in-house recruitment, so I think being a part of a team and doing things with others is like that collaborative piece is something I would find I'd be looking for hard if I was as brave as you've been to do something like the Alchemist venture. But I also think joining up with a team you're inspired by, that's huge. That's awesome.
Yeah, I totally agree. The inspiration's huge. I've just been working with the folks for a day, and I already feel like invigorated, right? So it's much different than shutting your laptop down at the end of the day and it was just you, when you have like a team around you. So Spencer, appreciate you thinking about me, reaching out, and I look forward to it.
We are really excited to have you, Sean, and only we're able to find you because of the great work you did before. We're pumped. I can't say enough how excited we are to have you on the team.
All right. So thank you, Steve. Thank you, Spencer. Appreciate your time today, guys. We had a great chat. And until next time, happy hunting. And, we'll catch you on the next round.
Cool. Thanks.
Bye.